Hello, welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you were watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I've got a breaking news update coming out from Ukraine, and we're going to talk more about this minerals deal that's been proposed by the United States between Trump and Zelensky. Okay, so new update here on your screen. Details leaked on proposed deal by U.S. for Ukraine's rare earth minerals. The U.S. and Ukraine close in on a minerals agreement worth hundreds of billions, under which the U.S. would express its desire to keep Ukraine free, sovereign, and secure. This was according to the mainstream media outlet Axios today, and they apparently have gotten their hands on this proposal deal for minerals exchange for military support for Ukraine. And I want to give you guys an update on this and kind of get to the bottom of what this proposal has and if Ukraine is going to accept this. And we're hearing that sometime in the next week or two, we should see Trump and Zelensky coming together and signing this major agreement, potentially worth up to 500 billion. Okay, so let's jump into this. We're going to hop on over here to Axios and I'll show you guys this report. And it says inside the proposed US Ukraine minerals deal, this just coming out today, February 24th, 2025. Here's an old photo of Trump and Zelensky when they met back in September. And it says right here, the US and Ukraine are closing in on minerals agreement worth hundreds of billions of dollars, which the US would express its desire to keep Ukraine free, sovereign, and secure, according to a draft obtained by Axios. It says why it matters. The Trump administration sees the agreement as a way to get a return on U.S. investment in Ukraine, which has vast untapped mineral wealth. Ukrainian officials see the deal as a way to halt the deterioration of relations with Trump administration and establish a long-term partnership, longer term that is, partnership with the U.S. Ukrainian official told Axios a deal is close, could be signed as soon as Monday. The official said the document Axios has reviewed is the most recent version, but could still be amended. Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Olga Stefanishina, that's kind of hard to say, confirmed in an ex post Monday that the sides were close to a deal and said signing it would showcase our commitment for decades to come. And it says, driving the news, the draft agreement calls for the establishment of a reconstruction investment fund that will be co-managed by the U.S. and Ukraine. Okay, so this part is pretty big because we were hearing the original proposals before, at least the very first one that was rejected. It sounded to me like it was going to be controlled only by the U.S., that Ukraine would basically contribute to a fund and then they would have nothing to do with it, is kind of what I was seeing before. But it looks like it will be co-managed according to this new draft agreement. Okay, so that's good for Ukraine that they'll have a say in this. And it says here, key quote, the government of the United States and America intends to provide a long-term financial commitment to the development of a stable and economically prosperous Ukraine, the draft says. So if you notice too, it's highly focused on making sure that Ukraine actually is prosperous and their economy comes back to normal again, maybe even better than what it was before. I think we're going to see a lot of major investment going into Ukraine as well. Even a lot of companies will probably start going into Ukraine and building up their economy. And it says here, it adds that the funds will be designed so as to invest in projects in Ukraine and attract investments to increase development, including in areas like mining and ports. So as you can see here, they're talking about mining and ports being some of the major areas. And this is actually something that the U.S. was looking into. They were trying to get a hold of the mining and ports inside of Ukraine also. So I'm not sure if maybe that's where they're making these amendments at, is they're saying, okay, well, instead of us taking control of your ports, or at least good majority of them, how about we just increase development there, and that'll produce more income, and that'll probably fund this, or it'll put money into this fund that they're setting up right now, this investment fund, and then also it'll make Ukraine more prosperous, and in the end, the U.S. more prosperous is kind of the way that I see that. But it also suggests the U.S. will recoup some of its expenditures related to defending, reconstructing, and returning Ukraine to its pre-war GDP. Okay, so looks like the U.S. will get some of their money back. And I think Zelensky was coming out and saying today that the U.S. has only provided Ukraine 100 billion or somewhere around there, somewhere around 100 billion. When it's just like a week or two ago, we had Trump coming out and saying multiple times that he had given Ukraine like 350 billion, or the U.S. did, not Trump, but the U.S. gave Ukraine 350 billion. So Zelensky was kind of coming out and refuting that and saying, no, you didn't give us that much. We actually only got 100 billion. So it says here between the lines, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky infuriated Trump by rejecting an initial U.S. proposal, but said Monday at a G7 leaders meeting marking 3 years since Russia's invasion that he hoped to sign an agreement in Washington soon. He told reporters Sunday that the U.S. side had dropped a demand that it receive 500 billion from Ukrainian minerals projects, as some Zelensky noted was far more than the U.S. had contributed to Ukraine. So looks like the U.S. did drop that demand. They're not going to be expecting to receive 500 billion or more from Ukrainian minerals projects. So that's a big update also because they were calling for that and they looked to be pretty stern on that as well. They wanted 500 billion back, at least Trump did. Zelensky rejected the idea of treating aid to Ukraine as a debt that must be repaid and added that the agreement must include U.S. military support for Ukraine. Okay, so as far as I know, there is no U.S. military commitment, at least from what we understand. It says right here, the intrigue. The draft seen by Axios expresses a desire that Ukraine remain free, but does not specify any U.S. military commitment. So see, not so much information yet on military commitment for Ukraine coming from the U.S. That could be good or bad. And maybe it's not even really needed because right now Europe is giving so many aid packages to Ukraine, and we're going to be seeing potentially hundreds of billions going to Ukraine, which is way more than the U.S. ever gave them. So there's a possibility they might not even need the U.S. so much to support them. Yeah, this part here where it says Zelensky rejected the idea of treating aid to Ukraine as a debt that must be repaid. That's a big one too. So it looks like this is going to be more like cooperation between the United States versus like, hey, you're just going to, give money into this fund with your minerals that you produce inside of your nation. You're going to repay the debts that are owed to the U.S. So it looks more like the U.S., at least in terms of this deal, is trying to work hand in hand with the Ukrainian government versus just telling them, hey, you owe us money back. So that's a good positive sign in my opinion. And it says here also, it also stipulates that Ukraine must contribute 500 billion to the fund and that Ukraine's contributions must be doubled to U.S. contributions, but it does not call for that sum to be paid to the U.S. Okay, so not necessarily where they're going to get all this money, but apparently Ukraine is going to be contributing at least 500 billion to this fund, and Ukraine's contributions must be double the U.S. contributions. So I'm assuming at least 200 billion. Is that based? I'm not sure if that's based off of the amount that that the U.S. gave them throughout this war, or I don't know. But it looks like at least 500 billion that Ukraine will be contributing to this fund. So that number is still going to be maintained, but I don't think the U.S. is going to get the full 500 billion. Obviously, the draft calls for 50% of Ukraine's revenues minus operating expenses from extractable materials, including minerals, oil, and gas, be paid into the fund. Okay, so 50% of the revenues that they get from extractable materials will go into this fund. Bloomberg first reported on aspects of the proposed deal, and it says worth noting the text contains a provision referring to projects in areas temporarily occupied by the Russian Federation in the event such areas are deoccupied. Okay, so I thought that was interesting. So I'm assuming that maybe if Russia gives up some land that they currently control, and maybe some of these minerals projects that are going on in some of these territories that Russia currently controls, maybe the U.S. can get some funding out of those as well, and this will kind of get tied into this same deal, and could potentially produce income from these areas that get liberated by Ukraine if they're given back to Ukraine. Much of Ukraine's mineral wealth is in the war-torn east, and it says what's next. The draft seen by Axios calls for the U.S. Treasury and Commerce departments, along with Vice President Vance's office, to work out the details of the arrangement with Ukraine's economy ministry after the initial framing document is signed. At the bottom, the document has spaces for the signatures of Secretary of State Marco Rubio and his Ukrainian counterpart, Andriy Sybiha. Sources on both sides have told Axios a deal is looking increasingly likely and could be announced soon. Okay, so there you go, guys. That's the latest updates on this minerals deal. Okay, so it's looking, at least at the moment, it's looking a little bit more favorable towards Ukraine, and I wonder if Zelensky will sign this, or maybe they're going to look for more amendments. I don't really know yet, but it's definitely looking a lot better than the way it looked in the very beginning. As in the beginning, it was basically just telling Ukraine, you're going to pay us back. You're going to fund it all with these, rare earth minerals from your country. And even though Zelensky was saying a lot of them were controlled by Russia in the east, and the remaining of their country didn't have as much, of these minerals. But yeah, it's definitely looking better, at least in terms of cooperation with the U.S. And it looks like relations are at least a little bit more stable for the meantime. And we're not hearing Trump coming out and bashing on Zelensky. If you notice, he's not really saying anything like that right now. It's been a little bit more quiet. And obviously, a lot of talk today is on the 3-year anniversary for Ukraine. So, not too much news on Trump, but we should be seeing here very soon that Trump and Zelensky are going to meet, because there was actually a new statement that came out from Trump today on over here on X from Max24. Trump, I'll meet with Zelensky maybe this week or next week to sign a deal on mineral resources. And a couple other things he stated here was, I don't see a problem with sending European troops as peacekeepers to Ukraine. He's mentioned that before. And I'll meet with Putin soon. Okay, so looks like Zelensky and Trump are going to meet very soon in the next week or two at the most to sign this minerals agreement. It looks like, to me, most likely this will be signed. I don't think we'll see too many amendments, maybe some small things. But it looks like they will make a deal. Hopefully they will. And hopefully it'll be good for both sides. We'll see what happens. And at the end of the day, after they meet and sign this agreement, hopefully U.S. Support will continue for Ukraine, and Ukraine can be prosperous. And if this war comes to an end, their economy can recover and they can rebuild their nation, as it's been destroyed by 3 years of heavy fighting. But just wanted to give you guys an update on what's going on with this minerals agreement. So lots of big news regarding this today, and I want to thank you so much for tuning in for this update. And please let me know what you think about all this down below in the comment section. That's going to be it for today's update. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.